If you're at all familiar with the modern era of Five Nights at Freddy's, I'm sure you have at least a vague understanding of Security Breach's main antagonist, Vanessa. Well, what if I told you that many people think Vanessa's been hiding a dark secret from us for almost 5 years? The fact that she's an AFTON. However, I wasn't so sure at first, so I decided to dive deep into Vanessa's past and unearth as much evidence about her as possible to determine once and for all whether she's an AFTON or not. So strap in and let's find out the truth about Vanessa, make some huge changes to the FNAF timeline, and find out if her name is actually VanessaAfton, or if this is all one big lie. In case you need a refresh on Vanessa's identity, I'll go over all her appearances to date and some of the foundations for the VanessaAfton theory, but if you're already a Vanessa expert, this video is chaptered, so watch any way you want. Vanessa's first confirmed appearance was at the end of Help Wanted's Curse of Dreadbird DLC for the Vanny mask you collect in the Corn Maze level of said expansion. In the lobby, if you put on the mask and held the glitch trap plushie you get from beating the base game, you hear the following dialogue where she's seemingly talking to the anomaly.
Yes, I hear you. I know. No, there's no miscommunication. I understand. Yes, I have it. I need it myself. I think you would like it. No one suspects anything. Don't worry. I'll be ready. And I won't let you down. It will be fun.
Vanessa's next appearance was in Five Nights at Freddy's Special Delivery, the now shut down AR game, where she appeared in a chain of emails sent to her by fellow employee and professional simp Lewis. These emails made it pretty clear that she was being controlled by Glitchtrap during AR and was trying to find a way out of his control, with her searching help over and over again into the office computers to try and get Lewis's attention. Throughout the emails Lewis sends to Vanessa, it's pretty clear she's hacking Fazbear Entertainment to promote her to higher positions and give her access to what Glitchtrap needs. Quote from 2 of the emails from Lewis. I haven't heard from you. I guess you probably know that. Does _pizzaplex mean anything to you? Whoever created those false credentials also used them to override security protocols and allow a data packet through after it was flagged as a virus. Please just let me know you're okay. There's a package here for you from a fabric company. Are you making a costume? These emails make it pretty clear that Vanessa's plotting to go to or control the upcoming Pizzaplex location in some way, all while trying to break free of the anomaly at the same time. But we know she failed at that last part because of the big game she didn't star in because her role was reduced to practically nothing: security breach. In this game, we see Vanessa as a night guard at the Pizzaplex, doing her best to catch Gregory. However, in certain parts of the game, Vanessa would be replaced by Vanny, an AFTON wannabe with a sewn-together bunny costume, who would have tried to stab Gregory to death if Steelwool hadn't cut her knife from the game. So, what is it that makes people think this character could be an AFTON? Are they right? Let's find out. Obviously, one of the main pieces of evidence for the VanessaAfton theory is the Five Nights at Freddy's movie released late last year in October, where Vanessa Shelley, a cop who befriends Mike in the movie, ends up being the daughter of infamous serial killer William Afton. The, dare I say, parallels in this movie and its plot were glaringly obvious, but even with this in mind, I still wasn't convinced. But that's not where it ends, at least, not really. In Security Breach itself, you can find a collection of CDs that, if inserted into a player in a very specific room, which just so happens to be a replica of the Afton family living room, will play recordings of 2 clients talking to a therapist, one being Vanessa and the other being a mysterious person known only as Patient 46. In one of Vanessa's CDs, the therapist brings out that she had a father named Bill, who made her lie to the court during a custody battle between him and his wife, Vanessa's mother. It's pretty obvious what this could mean. Bill is clearly short for William, and since we don't know what happened to Mrs. Afton, it's not out of the question that Vanessa's parents are William and Mrs. Afton. In FNAF AR, the emails also seem to confirm that her name is Vanessa A. I think you can guess what believers of today's theory think that A stands for. But here's the thing. The one part of this theory I never really understood is how William survived long enough to have Vanessa. After all, he should have died shortly after FNAF 1, right? If we presume FNAF 1 takes place in the late 90s using the evidence we got from the week before, which I'll talk about soon, and add Vanessa's estimated age in security breach around 25, that's still 2024 at most. And we know the Pizzaplex era of FNAF happens further along in the timeline, thanks to the gap between Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator and the shutdown of Fazbear, which we have good reason to assume takes place around 2023, and Help Wanted and Fazbear's revival. Essentially, my main issue with this theory was that even if Vanessa was born in 1998, she would still be too old for security breach to take place with her being in her 20s, as the modern timeline suggests. So what the hell is going on? Well, I've seen some people say that the solution to this problem is changing the way we think about the timeline. Think about it, we've never had a confirmed date for William Afton's Springlock failure. We just know it most likely happened after the closing of a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, likely the one from FNAF 1. So if there's no indicator of when this Springlock failure happened, then that could mean the failure could have happened at any point before FNAF 3, which probably takes place around 2028 thanks to the new timeline. As well as that, although I don't think Scott Coffin originally had this in mind, the corpse inside Springtrap still has flesh, organs, and skin clearly visible, and this is very easily seen with Scraptrap. If Afton had really been in that safe room for 30 years, all that tissue would be gone, and the only thing inside that suit during FNAF 3 would have been some bones and possibly some ligaments still connected to the suit. So is that the first FNAF movie takes place around 2000. Even though Vanessa obviously isn't an adult at this time in games, notice that Afton also gets springlocked in this movie. Could this be evidence for Follow Me happening in the 21st century? So far, Afton getting springlocked around the 2000s doesn't seem like it's out of the question. So where does Vanessa come in? Well, in FNAF AR, the name on her email is Nessie97, and if that number is anything to go off of, that means we've got ourselves a Vanessa Afton that's born in 1997, which is coincidentally 1 year before 1998, presumably the new date of FNAF 1. Okay, before we carry on, I think it's best I explain why I think FNAF 1 takes place in the late 90s, between 96 and 98, and not in 1993 as we've all believed for about a decade now, and some new changes that have been made to the timeline. And trust me, this is gonna get a little bit insane and all over the place, but it'll all tie back to Vanessa in the end. In case you don't know, a brand new FNAF interactive novel that's confirmed by Scott Coffin to be canon to the games the week before came out in early September and completely changed everything we thought we knew about FNAF 1. One of those things is the date that game takes place. In the book, we're introduced, or rather reintroduced, to Ralph, a security guard working at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, who's also the phone guy we've all come to love. While reading, we find out that not only did Ralph start working at the company early on in its lifespan, but that he also had a daughter, Copelia, around the same time as recording some of his first pre-recorded tapes for the company. We don't see these in any game, but Ralph does know that he was young and naive at the time of recording them. During the events of the book, we also find out that Copelia is almost 12 during this book, and thus FNAF 1. So FNAF 1 has to take place around 12 years after Ralph recorded those first tapes. My first thought was, of course, 1983, the year Fazbear Entertainment opened its doors with the first Freddy Fazbear's location. But now that I think about it, I'm not so sure. In FNAF 2 on night 5, when Phone Guy talks about finding the original owner of Fredbear's Family Diner, it's clear he's not all too familiar with the place. However, he did record the Springlock guidance tapes we hear throughout FNAF 3, so he must be lying, right? Well, not necessarily. You see, we know Springlock suits are still in use to some capacity after Fredbear, since Phone Guy tells us the reason they were discontinued was because of multiple simultaneous Springlock failures at a Freddy Fazbear's sister location. The official definition of a sister location is a business owned by the same company, similar to a subsidiary. Fredbear's Family Diner is not a subsidiary of Fazbear Entertainment. It's Fazbear's predecessor that was swapped out with the Freddy's location, with the latter becoming the new face of the company. As well as that, the incident we see here with the big bite of 83 isn't a Springlock failure as many think it is. The Fredbear we see here is already in animatronic mode, meaning the Springlocks inside the suit are already snapped shut, which means that the bite was likely caused by the pressure caused by Fredbear trying to sing as his programming told him to. So if the failure wasn't at Fredbear's, that means Ralph could have started working at Fazbear much later down the line, possibly right after the MCI. Let me explain. In sister location on night 4, Baby tells us that the Springlock suit her trapped in came from her old pizzeria, Circus Baby's Pizza World, but it was never used for its intended purpose. Think about it. One guy brings up an incident at a sister location. Baby's is very much a sister location. Hell, it's in the name of the game. And since I believe Baby's likely opened right after or right before the MCI, we have a date for Phone Guy's likely adhesion to the company, 1985, right before the closure of Circus Baby's Pizza World and the first Freddy Fazbear's. Add 12 to 1985, and you get 1997, the approximated date of the original Five Nights at Freddy's. And hey, this year and the paycheck from FNAF 1 match up well enough with the minimum wage in Utah at the time. In 1997, the minimum wage in the state of Utah, which we know FNAF takes place in, was $4.75 an hour. Multiply that by 6, the amount of hours spent at FNAF 1 per night, and then by 5, the amount of nights, and you've got yourself a pretty sum of $142.50. Now, You might be thinking that's still over $20 above the FNAF 1 paycheck, which is worth $120. But remember that not only is Fazbear Entertainment a shifty company, they paid Mike another $120 paycheck afterwards for his overtime, which goes well over the minimum wage, so they're safe from any third parties scrying their payments. However, there's also the fact that the only years in the 90s with a Friday the 13th of November, as we see in the paychecks, are 1993 and 1998, so we can make some allowances for the timeline and say that Ralph and Mike worked their respective shifts in 1998. Additionally, in one of the pages of the book, Ralph mentions that he would say Freddy's was the happiest place on Earth, but that would infringe a trademark, or Disneyland's motto. Disneyland's motto was trademarked in August of 1998, so the clues are all there. Admittedly, some of the timeline stuff here is a bit strange, but there's also the possibility that the recorded tapes from FNAF 3 aren't Ralph, and they're recorded by a different employee since Scott was the only voice actor for FNAF back then. Whoa, that was admittedly a lot, but what does all this have to do with Vanessa? Well, as I said earlier, her username in FNAF AR is Nessie97, so that must mean she was born in the late 90s, right before FNAF 1, and a few years before the Follow Me minigames where Afton gets springlocked, right? Well, that does cause the problem of security breach taking place much farther along in the timeline than her birth. So, yet again, changes have to be made. I'll keep it quick this time, but essentially, if we move FNAF 3 from 2023 to 2015 to match up with the MCI, or 30 years after that incident, and move FNAF 6 accordingly to around 2016, that leaves a lot more space for us to work with. We know Vanessa's 23 in FNAF AR, meaning that the game would take place in 2020 if she was born in 97, which lines up well with what we established earlier. Vanessa could be around 26 in Security Breach since he's 23 in FNAF AR, meaning Security Breach could take place around 2023. In fact, we don't even need to make the adjustments I brought up earlier, but I personally prefer it like this, just so the memory of Fazbear has time to die at least a little bit before help wanted. So far, this is all matching up sort of well, at least in FNAF terms, so now that we've gotten past the timeline implications of Vanessa being an Afton, what can I say about its canonicity? Well, I think it's more than likely. After all, what better candidate for Glitchtrap to tackle than a traumatized young girl with a dead abusive father who just so happens to be the man the anomaly is imitating? Chances are she's an orphan too, so that makes her even more emotionally susceptible to Glitchtrap. So far, Vanessa being the daughter of William Afton with another woman that's not the mother of the 3 Afton kids is becoming far more likely. She's even similar looking to Elizabeth, so genetically speaking that does make sense. Before we tackle the VanessaAfton timeline and my conclusion on Vanessa's identity, let's quickly go over some of the counter evidence that attempts to disprove this theory. Number 1. This timeline is messed up as hell at some points. I personally find it very hard to believe this is the actual intended placement of the games by Scott in the timeline, but to be honest, since the week before gave us that 1998 bombshell from earlier, anything can happen. Number 2. While not as strong, a series of minigames from Into the Pit depicting Vanny as Afton's daughter were scrapped. Number 3. The Vanessa from the FNAF movie is likely an Elizabeth stand-in or narrative parallel? The reason I say this is because, like Elizabeth in FNAF 6, she follows her father's orders and wants to make him proud to some extent, or break out of his control. Also, this isn't evidence, but Vanessa's actress is literally named Elizabeth Lale, so yeah, like I said, not evidence, but still funny. Number 4. Security Breach's timeline placement, while a bit strange, I admit, seems to imply it takes place around the 2030s. The entire modern FNAF timeline is questionably placed at best in terms of the years those games take place in, but Security Breach seems to be pretty far along in the 2030s, making VanessaAfton more and more unlikely. And finally, and this is in my opinion the biggest piece of evidence against VanessaAfton, the second interview Dawko had with Scott Coffin back in August. In case you haven't watched it, which you should, Scott essentially says that he failed to tell Steelwold the right lore for Security Breach, which means they had to invent most of the stuff we see in the game. Since then, they've course corrected and fixed some of the original mistakes. Vanessa being an Afton, or being connected to that family by blood, hasn't been brought up since Security Breach, and honestly, I don't think it will be brought up again. Now's the big reveal. The timeline for VanessaAfton. Let's keep it quick and simple. VanessaAfton is born in 1997, right before the events of FNAF 1 in 98. Around 2005, when she's 8, Father William gets springlocked shortly after a court case where he forced her to lie to the jury. William spends 10 years rotting in the springlock suit until 2015, while Vanessa goes to live somewhere else. Around 2020, after the chaos of FNAF 3 and FNAF 6, Vanessa is infected by the Glitchtrap virus and goes on to work at the Fazbear Funtime service we see in FNAF AR, eventually ending up in the Pizzaplex. And the rest is history. So, in conclusion, do I believe that Vanessa, the night guard from Security Breach, is an Afton and the daughter of William? Honestly, I'm not sure. I went really far into this and made quite a few logical leaps to piece this Vanessa-centric timeline together. but I'm still not convinced. I guess I'll have to think about it. I don't think Vanessa being an AFTON was Scott's original intent, simply because we never got any foreshadowing of it beforehand. Sure, follow me can happen at any point before FNAF 3, but I think it happens shortly after FNAF 1 and not way off into the future. Overall, I think that while this theory is interesting and worth considering in the future, it doesn't change too much in the lore or fix any big mysteries that actually matter, and sort of just complicates the games even more, but I'll still consider it going forth. But what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so remember to comment them down below. I read every single comment and reply to most, so feel free to go post your opinion. Also, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and remember, keep on theorizing and never stop overthinking. This has been Woodward Circle, the Midnight Theorist.